Hi everyone, I'm Colleen and this live stream is brought to you by the awesome people over at Princess Dental Staffing. Happy to be here with everyone today on this Wednesday. So today's topic, we are talking about how to reduce bias in the hiring process, okay? So we're gonna start off by talking about what bias is, and how it affects your hiring process, and then we'll be giving you some tips on how you can reduce bias in your hiring process. Okay, but of course, before we dive into all of that, just want to remind everyone that each week we are bringing you a new topic covering your career in the dental industry. Okay, and of course, these live streams each week are brought to you by Princess Dental Staffing every Wednesday. Okay. So if you don't want to miss out on future streams, be sure to subscribe to our page or excuse me, follow our page or subscribe to our channel. And if you like the content that we're bringing you, be sure to drop us a like. And if you have any comments or thoughts or questions on any of the content that we're bringing you, be sure to comment below, especially today, because we are having a really, really awesome conversation. And I'm so excited about today's topic. So I'm really excited to dive right into it. But again, one more thing before I do, though, be sure to visit Princess Dental Staffing's website, which is princessdentalstaffing.com. There you can find their blog, which covers a lot of the same information that we cover in these live streams. So you can absolutely read the blog posts on how to reduce bias in the hiring process as well. Additionally, you can take a look at their job board. So Princess Dental Staffing is an online dental job board, and they have positions available for dental receptionists, dental assistants, dental hygienists, and dentists in a variety of different areas. We've got full-time, part-time, temporary, and permanent positions. So you can hop on to princessdentalstaffing.com today and see what positions they have available in your area. You can also create a profile and get your information in front of hiring managers as well. Okay. Alrighty. So today's topic, we're talking about how to reduce bias in the hiring process. So let's first start off about talking about what hiring bias is, essentially. Okay. Well, let's first start off talking about what bias is, and then we'll talk about how it presents in the hiring process. Okay. So, bias is essentially an inclination, opinion, or feeling that you have about a person. Okay. And if you have bias, then it affects how you feel about the person, okay, or group of people, okay. So that's basically what bias is. Now, there are different types of bias. Usually bias is categorized either as conscious or explicit bias, and unconscious bias or implicit bias. Okay, so conscious bias or explicit bias is basically where you make your bias known. Okay. You're well aware that you have this bias and that you're acting on this bias. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking more so about unconscious bias or what we call implicit bias. Okay. Because that's a little bit harder to pin down and to recognize when it's happening. So unconscious bias is exactly what it sounds like. It's something that you're doing unconsciously. Okay. It's not something that you are actively doing or actively engaging in, but it's happening all the same. Is what I meant to say. Okay. So unconscious bias or implicit bias is basically, like I said, it's just something that you don't even realize that you're doing. So it's very difficult. It's a lot more difficult to pin down and to resolve because, again, you just don't realize that you're doing it. So how does bias show up in the hiring process? The hiring process, it could show up as unconscious racism, ageism, sexism, or those sorts of things. Okay, so basically, if there is unconscious bias in the hiring process, it's going to lead to a very undiverse workforce. Okay. So that's usually where you can see that it is occurring. If your workforce isn't very diverse, that might be an indicator. It's not necessarily the only indicator or the the end all be all indicator, but it could indicate that there is some implicit bias or unconscious bias happening within the hiring process. Okay. Alrighty. Now, sometimes this unconscious bias happens. It's usually happens based on the name on the resume or the application. Okay. So when you see the name on the application or the resume, sometimes, things like sex or gender, race, national origin, and even religion can be presupposed from the name that is listed on the resume or the application. Okay. So that's kind of where a lot of that implicit bias kind of happens. Okay. When you first see the resume or the application, because usually the first thing you see is the name, right? It's usually right at the top of the document or of the application. So, those sorts of inclinations or um, those sorts of assumptions about someone's name a lot of the times can lead to implicit bias. Okay. And again, implicit and explicit bias within the hiring process can lead to a very undiverse workforce. Okay. And that's really, so when you kind of help to eradicate that bias from the hiring process, you'll find that you have a more diverse workforce. So, and that's a very advantageous thing. Having a diverse workforce, there are a lot of advantages for your company or your business in having a diverse workforce. And I can't name them all here because it would just take too long. But there are there have been tons and tons of studies, and there are a lot of advantages to having a diverse workforce. But probably the major advantage of having a diverse workforce is that you have a diverse skill set and that you have diverse perceptions. Okay. So when you have a very homogenized workforce, then you tend to have, again, you tend to have a homogenized skill set, and you tend to have homogenized viewpoints. Okay. And that can affect a lot of different processes within a business or an operation, such as like problem solving or customer service or things of that nature. Okay. But when you have a more diverse workforce, okay, again, you have those diversified skill sets that can be applied to a lot of different areas and that can really potentially even open up services, offering services within your business or things like that, but also diverse perspectives. So having diverse perspective, being able to look at issues and items from multiple sides can allow you like a better problem solving, right? When it comes to things like I said, that can be anything. That can be customer service, that could be operations within the office, how you do certain things or how you handle certain things. It could bring up points in different again points of views when you are trying to improve something. If one of your values within your office is continuous improvement, having diverse perspectives is really advantageous. Okay. And it really helps you get to out of the box thinking and out of the box solutions that really work. Okay. So there are tons and tons of benefits to having a diverse workforce. That's kind of like the major one, diverse skill set and diverse perspectives. But there are lots. Okay. And the first step to having a diverse workforce is to reducing and hopefully eradicating that bias within the hiring process. Okay. Alrighty, so let's talk about how you can reduce bias in the hiring process. Just some tips, some things to kind of work to look for and to look out for, and to problem solve and resolve if you find these things in your hiring process. Okay. Number one, aim for simplicity and reduce complexity. Okay, so seek out softwares and applicant tracking systems and analytical tools that help you standardize the hiring process and hopefully that gather data so that you can review the data and determine if there are any issues present for you to resolve. Okay. Lots of different applicant tracking systems out there, lots of different HR systems out there to choose from. And a lot of them do come, and since they're more modern, a lot of them do come with those sorts of tools that can really help you kind of standardize the hiring process, because standardizing the hiring process helps you to, treat each application or each resume with the with the same standard of care and attention. Okay. Number two, update and experiment with job descriptions. So, with job descriptions, make sure that you're not including gender specific or sex specific adjectives. Okay. So, when I say, sex specific or gender specific, I'm talking about he, him, she, her. Okay. So try to avoid using pronouns altogether in your job descriptions. But if there's just an instance where it just sounds a little bit wonky, if you don't have an adjective, that's totally fine too. Just defer to they, them. Okay. That's just kind of the easier way to do it, because, and the reason that's so important is because if you have, sex specific or gender specific pronouns and terms, in your job descriptions, it can actually discourage applicants from the opposite group or groups, um, to apply for your position. Okay, and that means you have a more homogenous applicant pool, which means you're hiring from an homogenous applicant pool, right? So make sure that you're removing those gender specific adjectives. Okay. Number three, conduct a work sample test. Okay. So the best predictors of future performance are tests that mimic the types of tasks the candidate will be doing on the job. So when you're hiring for the dental office, okay, having like a working interview in which that applicant is going to conducts a lot of the same tasks that they can be expected to conduct while on the job can be a viable option and can really help you see skill sets, right? And determine how skilled somebody is in the position. Okay. Number four, create uniformity in the interview process. Okay. So, being uniform in your interview process, that might look like having the same set of questions for everyone. And actually, do you know, there was an article, I'll link it below after this video posts, but there was an article in SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management recently about, helping hiring managers determine the interview questions to asking, making sure that the interview questions that you're asking are related to the job or related to relevant skill sets. Okay, and kind of avoiding those that aren't related or relevant. I'll have to click post that link down below if I can find it. Hopefully, I can. But they had a really interesting article recently on interview questions. Standardizing interview questions could be a really great option for making sure that your interviews are more uniform and more standard. Okay. And then having a grading system for how the applicant the interviewee responded. So, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10 or a scale of 1 to 5, whatever makes most sense to you. Okay. So, introducing those things into the interview process helps standardize the interview process, which helps reduce bias. Okay. Number five, establish diversity objectives. So if diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we're calling DEI initiatives, okay, are important to you in your office, and I really hope that they are, because again, diverse workforces are really, really advantageous. Okay. So if DEI initiatives are very important to your office, consider, creating objectives and goals within your office and tracking their progress and seeing how well they're moving forward. Okay. Have a comment here. Diversity brings people together. Yeah, absolutely, Heidi. Absolutely. Again, it's not just about, it is very advantageous to have a diverse workforce for the office. Okay. But it's also, it's just also very, very important to ensure that you are hiring the best person for the role, the person who's going to be doing the best job for that role. Okay. So, and again, when it comes to bias, whether it's explicit or implicit, it has no place in the hiring process. So we definitely want to reduce and hopefully eliminate that from the hiring process altogether, so that we get the best person for the job that needs to be done. Okay. Alrighty. So thanks for so that's those are the tips that I have for you today. But thanks everyone for coming in. I know this is a really difficult subject, but it's something that has been at the forefront of companies' minds and hiring managers' minds for a while now. And I think it's a really important thing to be talking about and to have these conversations about. I know they're a bit uncomfortable, but I'm really glad that you got to see this video today and that you stuck it out with me, because the first step in eliminating hiring bias, implicit or explicit bias within the hiring process, is to acknowledge that it happens, to acknowledge that it exists, and recognize that it is an issue, that and we're not fighting the person, we're fighting the issue. Okay, and we're working towards eradicating the issue so that we can be fairer and unbiased within our hiring processes and really have those diverse workforces. Okay. Alrighty. So just one quick review before I let you guys go today. So here are the 5 tips to help reduce hiring bias within your hiring process, within your application process. Number 1, aim for simplicity and reduce complexity. Okay, so we've take some time to research some of the different applicant tracking systems or HR systems that are out there that can really help you and that can meet your needs. Gather that data if that's what you need, in order to analyze it later. Okay, and to help you standardize the hiring process and make it make the process even across the board. Okay. Number 2, update and experiment with job descriptions. Make sure that you are removing those sex specific and gender specific adjectives from your job descriptions in order to not discourage other groups from applying, so that you have a more diverse applicant pool and therefore a more diverse workforce. Okay. Number 3, conduct a work sample test. So, again, working interviews are a great option to see how people can perform on the job, but make sure that those working interviews really hit on the key points, right? Really hit on really help you see how the applicant can complete specific tasks, right, that are associated with and that they can be expected to do on the job if they were hired for it. Okay. Number 4, create uniformity in the interview process. Again, having the same set of questions for each applicant, um, and having a standardized grading system for how that applicant answers those questions are really great. Really great options to help standardize that interview process, because again, standardization of the hiring process altogether means that everyone gets treated equally and fairly, and that it's and helps you focus on the skill sets rather than the person. Okay. And lastly, number 5, establish diversity objectives. So I really hope that DEI initiatives are a major part of your office and that they are a value that you have. So be sure to establish those diversity goals and objectives within your office. Make sure that you track them and make sure that you follow up on their progress. Okay. All right, awesome. So thanks for being here with me today, everyone. We'll be back next week with another topic discussing your career in the dental industry. But until then, I hope everyone has a great week, has a great weekend. Continue to stay safe out there. I'll see you soon. All right, bye, everyone.